I'm Erika Brodnock, and I'm known as the chief superhero at my company, which is called Charisma Kids. And I'm here to speak to you today about unleashing the superhero within. I became a chief superhero because I earned my cape and I was able to unleash my inner superhero. So for me, it's all about emotional intelligence. We've heard about EQ today and how it manifests itself as traits such as resilience and positivity and creativity and happiness and confidence. But ultimately, for me, it's about understanding the way that we learn as individuals. And to put that into context, I'd like to introduce you to a little girl called Sancha. Sancha's the eldest of 5 children. She was born to a homeless single mother who had her at age 16. Sancha's age 5 and she's starting school for the first time. Suddenly, she's in a complex environment with lots of new people and different personalities. She experiences a plethora of emotions, from stress and anxiety to a bit of happiness and excitement and some frustration. Now, a child with high levels of emotional intelligence can quickly calm themselves down and settle into a place ready to absorb learning. A child with low levels of emotional intelligence, like Sancha, finds that much more difficult. Her emotions spiral out of control and they become an obstacle to learning. The effects of that are massive and they're quite far-reaching. So a child that misses early lessons because they're too stressed or wound up to learn falls behind and they lose confidence and they become disruptive, and before you know it, their parents are on the headmistress's speed dial. And most children that are diagnosed with conduct disorders have low levels of emotional intelligence. And we heard this morning how much of the prison population has low levels of emotional intelligence. But research has shown that emotional intelligence can be taught. And if it's learned early enough, we now know that we can prevent most of these problems from occurring in the first place. So for every £1 that's invested in social and emotional learning programmes for children below the age of 7, it returns an 84-fold investment to the economy. Which is a staggering amount for us not to be doing something about this. Luckily for Sancha, her mum caught wind of these facts and started to teach her children how to identify and regulate their emotions. So I'm Sancha's mum. And I'm delighted to say that at age 18, she's gone on to defy all the odds that were stacked against her in the early days. She's achieved outstanding results at GCSE. She's won a scholarship into sixth form, and she's on track to go to one of the UK's top universities. Her sibling, her younger brother, just took his GCSEs this year, and he did even better than she did with 9 A grades at GCSE and 1 B. And the younger siblings have just won scholarships into secondary school as well. So I've been privileged to work with my own children and to work with hundreds of families across the UK to help them to achieve similar results. But what I didn't tell you is that in 2008, I was diagnosed as having bipolar disorder. The psychiatrist that diagnosed me told me that I would never cure bipolar disorder and that I would have to take medication every day for the rest of my life. I remember thinking at the time that I felt so numb taking the medication that I didn't want that to be my existence forever. And unluckily for him, luckily for me, the onset of my medication coincided with my friend getting married. So I was taking the drugs for about 3 months. They caused me to put on weight. I needed to fit into a bridesmaid's dress. I went to the library to go and get a Davina Fit DVD so I could stand in front of the TV and work out. And I stumbled across Paul McKenna's book, Change Your Life in 7 Days. So I took the book, took the Davina Fit DVD, went went home, put the Davina Fit DVD on the coffee table, sat on the sofa, wolfed down the book. I devoured it all in one sitting. And over the course of the next 7 days, I started to implement some of the steps in Change Your Life in 7 days. And lo and behold, I realised that I was living down in that lower right-hand corner of unconscious incompetence. And I started to think about what my life might be like if I decided to move into one of the other boxes, any other box, just another box. And leave the box that I felt that I'd been placed in, and was powerless to move from prior to that point. So, as I say, I started to really delve into the mind and the brain and how it all worked. And I started to realise that the brain's a little bit like an onion. And just to keep it simple, because I'm still a very simple girl, there are 3 main layers. The first layer is all about our reflexes and our instincts and breathing and that sort of function. The second layer is where all of our emotional centres are held, and there's a part of the brain called the amygdala in there that's responsible for all of our memories too. And the third layer of the brain is about the prefrontal cortex and is responsible for construct and abstract thinking. It's the layer of the brain that enables us to be creative and to think our way out of problems. So if an incoherent signal is received by the brain caused by stress, it shuts down the third layer of the brain. Whereas if a coherent signal is received by the brain, it opens up that third layer of the brain. So I started to realise that I wasn't actually suffering from bipolar disorder. I was suffering from something that I've called same shit, different toilet syndrome. And that's because I had grown up carrying around some traumatic experiences that had happened to me, one at 4 and one at 7. They were the main sources of my trauma, and what I was doing was inadvertently walking around and living my life, but attracting circumstances, people, and experiences that kept on triggering me back into those traumatic events. So I started to think, well, if I can stop triggering myself into the traumatic events and start triggering myself into better events, how would that work out? And I went on a real journey and I went on a real search. I found some tools and techniques that were so simple to learn and easy to use that they literally turned my life around. I found techniques such as emotional freedom techniques, which involves tapping on the meridian points of the body, and neuro-linguistic programming and yoga and meditation and mindfulness. But one of the key finds for me was something called matrix re-imprinting, which enabled me to do some work with the 4 and 7-year-old traumatized versions of myself, among other traumatized versions of myself, and find freedom that I can't even begin to put into words, because actually my entire world is completely different to the world that I lived in before. And so everything I learned, I taught to my children. And we started to look at the positivity ratio in our lives and started to try to ensure that for every negative thing that happened, I engineered 3 positive ones so that we kept that positivity balance up. And we started to adopt an attitude of gratitude and write down some of the 3 things that we were grateful for each day. And I engineered opportunities for us to be creative on purpose within the home. And all of those things led to major changes in the way that we viewed our world. And the changes in the way that we viewed our world led to changes in the way that our world was. And it became, I suppose, for me, a passion to ensure that my children were equipped with the skills that they needed to make sure they didn't grow up like me. I was nearly consumed by the emotions that I carried from childhood into adulthood. And when I realised how easy it was to just let them go, I thought that it was a travesty that we live in a world that children aren't equipped with these skills right from the very off. So I got myself a vision, and that and that vision is to ensure that every child, no matter their start in life, is fully equipped with the tools they need for an equal opportunity to be successful. But this isn't just for disadvantaged children. Every parent wants happy, well-behaved and successful children, right? Yeah. And we've heard throughout the day that the instances of stress in preteens is at the highest level since records began. Never mind the 1950s, it's forever. And what's happening is that that's being blamed on a lack of play and children's overexposure to technology. So there are another set of people with a problem brewing, and they are the tech companies and the big manufacturers of tech products that are going to start to be seen as the evil people that are having an impact on children's well-being if they don't start to show that they have children at the centre of their strategies. So I started to look at how we might be able to pull that together. And then I began collecting people, a team of awesome superheroes that stand beside me and are some of the best minds in psychology and in technology that help me to build a platform. And that platform helps children to develop emotional intelligence through play. It helps parents to turn tantrums into tranquility. And it helps big brands and manufacturers to work with us to ensure that they show parents that they have children at the very heart of their strategies going forward. So we've taken the latest in neuroeducation and in positive psychology, and learning is delivered through superhero characters in the virtual world of Moodville. Children are able to personalise their own little superhero, and they play their way from places like Angry Alley and Fear Farm to Love Lane and Gratitude Gardens, while building skills such as happiness, confidence and empathy. The learning is personalised, it's responsive, it's adaptive and it's spaced. We ensure that the gameplay is sticky so that children want to keep playing with us, but we also ensure that they get a balanced play diet by sending them to complete offline missions which encourage them to interact with their families and with nature and with the world and communities that are around them. So children don't smell the broccoli because the games are highly entertaining, but they're also on missions that get them to cook healthy meals and sit and eat them with their families and have conversations and then report them back online. And they can't build their superheroes and unlock further gaming content unless they're being a superhero in the real world. So it's the perfect little balance of on and offline play. And for parents and teachers, yes, there are games for you too. We help the parents to kind of set clear instructions for children and let them know what they're going to get if they're able to complete the tasks successfully. And then they can also track their child's progress and see what offline activities are going to support them to build the skills that they need to work on the most. And as I say, it's all intrinsically linked to the gameplay, so children can't be a superhero in our virtual world unless they're being a superhero in the real world too, like me. And so I've lost count of how many people that told me that it wouldn't be possible to reach children as young as 3 or between the ages of 3 and 8 and help them to deal with trauma before trauma had occurred by equipping them with the skills that they need to be resilient and bounce back. And so I said, meh. And I cracked on regardless. And I'm proud to say that we launched the application last year, preloaded to more than 2 million technical devices. That rises to 5 million in December and then to 12 million next year. And we're also working with the BBC to see how we can scale this globally. We've won 16 awards in the last 18 months, one of which saw children rate us higher than one of the Disney properties, which was probably my proudest moment. So, yeah, you don't beat Disney every day. I mean, really. So, and it doesn't take much to make me happy nowadays. I guess it's a question of how have I been able to go from service user to wannabe service provider? Well, that's the question I'm asked the most anyway. And the first thing for me is about having a positive mindset and a very thick skin. After you've had 5 children, there isn't much dignity left, to be fair. But the 4 things that underpin that is the fact that I found my purpose. I know my why. And one of the things that I'm going to talk to you about was something that I learned at a conference, and it was about making a vision board. But it's not just about making a vision board, it's about the placement of said vision board. And we were instructed to place our vision board for that year in front of our TVs, so that we understood that every time we wanted to sit and watch TV, we needed to move our dreams to the side to be able to do that. And that was more than enough incentive for me to stop watching TV. And it also meant that I stopped a massive stream of negative information that was coming into my psyche. Another way of stopping that negative information from coming in was the questions that I was asking myself. I used to ask myself things like, what's wrong with me, and why does it never work out for me, and why doesn't it work? And now I ask myself questions like, what else is possible, and how can it get any better than this, and how can I travel every month and not have to pay for it? And lo and behold, my brain searches for those answers instead, and it's just a great way of being able to navigate yourself towards whatever it is that you want to achieve. The third thing has been covered already today, and that's just around there being no failure and only feedback. I'm a bit Marmite me. Some people love me and other people can't stand the bones of me. And that's okay, because I've given up trying to be all things to all people and get everybody to like me, because there is no failure, there's only feedback. So I take people's feedback. Most of the time, I have to say it's no. We're an unfunded startup that flies by the seat of our pants every single month, but just manages to scrape by. But I take the no's and I collect the no's, and I rely on year 8 the laws of probability that says that for every no I hear, I must be getting closer to my yes. And on the note of feedback, I think it's really important to develop a mindset that says that you eat it for breakfast, and you and in that I say that there's some feedback that's like a greasy fry-up that you just want to get rid of really, really quickly. And there's other feedback that's quite nutritious that you can use to build on. And as I say, it's about continuous and never-ending improvement. And that moves me on to what's next. Well, for me, it's definitely going to be continuing to push the boundaries, continuing to use technology to help to enable children to play more and to be educated in a different way. What if we lived in a world where there was no child that was bad at maths, because we were able to find the stimulus that opened up that third layer of the brain and enabled the child to be able to learn maths in a way that was conducive to them, rather than teaching them maths in a way that's conducive to a curriculum. I believe that that's possible. I no longer believe that anything's impossible, because when I went back to the psychiatrist that diagnosed me 2.5 years later, and he signed me off to the care of my doctor, telling me that I no longer had bipolar disorder, he still said that it was impossible to cure, but he then said that I couldn't have had it in the first place. At that point, I promptly reminded him that he was the effing git that diagnosed me in the first place. So the fact is that I don't believe that anything's impossible, but actually this isn't about me. I'm conscious of the fact that there are so many brilliant minds in this room and many people that are able to create change and create benefits for families, for communities, and to help me to fulfil my doe-eyed dream of changing the world, starting with Guernsey first. I remember where I am. And so I'm going to end my talk pretty much in the way that I started, by saying that I'm Erika and I'm known as the chief superhero because I've been able to earn my cape and unleash the superhero within. And I'm going to leave you with a few questions, and they are: what's your story? Where's your cape? And what do you need to do, and how do you need to perceive your story to be able to find your cape and unleash the superhero within? Thank you very much for listening.